Go back to that screen. Okay, just about. Whoa, Rob, where'd you go?
I'm still here.
Oh, what happened to you? Well, that was weird. I need to shut my phone off because maybe my phone. Yeah, that's what happened.
Hmm.
When my phone rings, you disappear because it's a iPhone, so everything rings. All my Macs ring.
Try and get.
Okay, so we're actually live. Let me go ahead and start the show here. Everyone, welcome to the New Media Show. My name is Todd Cochran. Of course, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Rob Greenlee. Rob, how are you?
I'm doing okay, Todd. How about you?
I am recovered, but I am not unburied. Um,
Right.
I,
Yeah.
I have literally, I was telling the team, I was talking to some of the team members this morning. I said, I've left my desk for a total of 30 minutes, both Monday and Tuesday, to get lunch. And I was going to take from 11 to right now off today to go to another event. And I never left the office. So, and there's a dire crisis here in the studio. I have this much bottled water left. So, I have a Coke on backup just in case.
Wow. That does sound like an emergency
It is
situation.
emergency because tap water is okay because it's the same quality as in bottled water, but bottled water sure tastes a lot better.
Better. That's right.
Yeah, or
Calling the National Guard for that,
or
Todd.
filtered water.
Right.
If I was smart, I'd get a filter put in here, and then I wouldn't have to, you know. But I do buy it in big jugs, so usually.
Right.
Anyway, welcome back from Podcast Movement.
Yeah.
Those of you that got to see our presentation. Well, it really wasn't a presentation; it was a discussion.
Yeah. Live on stage again. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was good to get up there and do that again. So, it was good. It's good.
So
It definitely got some traction in social media when you posted it. No question about it.
yeah, so we got covered in 2 or 3 newsletters, and
Hmm.
yeah, it was good. So if you're new to the family, make sure you get over to newmeshow.com and follow or subscribe. Smash that button. If you're on YouTube, smash
Smash that
subscribe
button.
too. Subscribe on YouTube. If you're following us on Facebook, make sure you follow the New Media page on Facebook.
Todd, I can tell you've been watching some YouTube videos because everybody says that on YouTube.
Well,
Smash that button,
well,
ding that
if you're a
bell,
podcaster, now you have to smash that follow button now, right? That's what it's
smash,
all about. We
hit that screen. Don't break your screen when you do it.
Don't
Right?
you know you have to have your podcast on YouTube? You have
I
to, or you
well,
will not be successful.
that's what Mr. Tom Webster said. So it must be true.
Oh, I'm not ready.
I know.
Oh, you caught me without being ready here. And maybe I can be ready here. Hang on. Here we go.
Don't eat me, Tom Webster.
There we go. Don't eat me, Tom Webster. So, and of course, I told the team, I said, stand by. Everybody's going to be asking, how do I publish to YouTube?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say that he's entirely wrong. I mean, YouTube is the second biggest search engine, right, for content.
But the key is you have to have
Right.
metadata in your YouTube posts to make it searchable. So
Yeah. I mean, you have to have a YouTube strategy with what you're doing. You
yeah,
can't just magically think that that's your savior.
but you can go to YouTube today, or after the show's over, you can say Podcast Movement Recap. That's the name of our episode today on YouTube. So you'll be able to find the recap for Podcast Movement on YouTube. Of course, there's no other metadata because I don't put a description in, so that
Mm-hmm.
I don't follow the YouTube SEO guidelines. So I guess I have to start doing that. But we actually have video on YouTube, unlike other podcasters that just have a blank image.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can speak about the conference side to some degree.
Oh,
I didn't make it to any of the after hours events typically.
yeah, you were
Um,
hobnobbing with Mark Cuban, who made an ass of himself.
well, okay, yeah. I mean, there's probably a case to be made that he wasn't seeing the the medium from an appropriate perspective.
You think?
Yeah. So,
He had a great infomercial though.
right. I mean, we've seen this happen before. New people into the medium that don't really understand the culture of podcasting, and they get up in front of. I think that happened to Hernan Lopez with the Podcast Academy too, right? To get that off the ground, that one went over with a lead balloon, and that's kind of what happened here too, to some degree, I think.
They could have hired. See, you were having dinner with him. If you'd have met him the night before, you could have give him the Todd and Rob consulting.
I did meet him the night before, so.
Oh, yeah. And you didn't, of course. What can you do when you're amongst 50 people of the celebrities and highbrows of podcasting?
Yeah, I did talk to him one-on-one for a while, but he was trying to go through a buffet to get food, so it wasn't exactly the most ideal opportunity. But I did talk to him one-on-one. I just asked him, what inspired him to want to get involved in creating this new platform.
Because podcasting hasn't advanced since 2005.
Well, that's kind of what his answer was. And I said, okay. It's not like I had this in-depth conversation with him about the topic. I think he went into this whole thing with a preconceived notion of what he thought the industry needed and what the opportunity he saw with this new fireside platform. And I mean, you have to accept the fact that this guy is going to have a certain amount of ego, right?
Yep.
About his vision. He's on television with Shark Tank, and he tells entrepreneurs all the time
their ideas suck or good.
Right. I mean, so his purview is that he knows everything that needs to be known about something, and that's kind of what happened here, and we shall see with the platform, Todd. Just like everything else, sure, Lipson did a deal with him to provide a podcasting element to that, but we really have nothing to do with the product that they're creating, and really had very little influence on that. So it's really just a matter of enabling that content to make it out of that platform, which is unlike what we've seen happen typically with even like Clubhouse or Twitter Spaces or any of the other social audio platforms have really not enabled a pathway to get the content into the podcasting medium itself. So, whether or not that content that is being created in those platforms is worthy of being in the podcast is a whole nother conversation. So, but there's content on Clubhouse that's making it into the podcasting world. I don't know how popular that stuff is on demand, but clearly you and I know that on demand is where the audience is. It's not live.
Right.
So that's the other part of this too, that we shall see how it works out.
It's kind of interesting from a show perspective for those of you who weren't there. Wednesday. Well, first of all, I got there early. I got there Sunday night. I went on Jack Daniels tour Monday. Had some meetings Monday night, Monday late afternoon and early evening, and then Tuesday was setup day. But Wednesday I was, booth traffic was fantastic. I went off to do my presentation that I had, and there was 150 people in the room, and I was very pleased by that, because I think, I'm going to say that's pretty close to my biggest session audience at Podcast Movement. I had lots of people come up all throughout the rest of the show and say thanks for the session, and basically thanking me, and I felt pretty good that they'd got something out of it. But then Wednesday finished on a kind of a high. And then what the hell happened on Thursday and Friday? It's just like
everybody left.
Like everyone left. They came through on Wednesday, and then Thursday it was crickets. I mean, well,
everybody left by Thursday morning. Everybody was gone.
It was. I'm like, what happened?
I think a lot of people flew in, only spent a couple days there, and got out.
It was. Where did everybody go? And
Oh.
I'm just, people don't fly all the way to Nashville and spend one day at an event. So
Well, I think most people were there Tuesday and Wednesday, and maybe they left Wednesday night.
why?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you for sure, but
I had some people tell me thought the conference was on Tuesday. They thought the conference was going Tuesday. So, but anyway, it was, and Friday, I told the team, you can't tear down. We can't tear down to 3:00 because it's in our contract. We have to, but there was people bailing. People were packing up, were gone by 10:30, 11 o'clock that morning. I talked, Dan was kind of in between a rock and a hard place. I feel bad for the podcast movement team because he said the 7 days prior to the event, they had 600 people convert from in-person to virtual.
Right.
And because of the scare about Delta.
Yeah.
And he told me 1,900 people checked in person. I'm going to say 1,500 tops.
Right.
If there was 1,900, well, I went back and did some comparisons on booth traffic. And we keep a track of how many people we contact, how many people we talk to, how much swag, all that stuff we track. And typically at a podcast movement, we usually will talk to at least 500 people at the show.
Mm-hmm.
And our number was 196.
Yeah, I think that the exhibition area was pretty slow, generally. Yeah, I mean, you never really saw large groups of people.
Never.
Flood the exhibition area.
Nope.
You just it never happened, and it typically always happens at podcast movements.
So because of that, I'm making changes to future events. We're not taking as many people to NAB. I'm scaling back on the number of bodies we're taking to different events.
Yeah.
Because I had 4 people there. You guys had 20.
Yeah.
And you probably needed 8, 7. Between 2, maybe 6.
Well, it was kind of a dual purpose for us. For a lot of the reasons there were so many people there was because a fair amount of the team members were new. Some of them were from acquired companies. So it was really an opportunity to get everybody together to meet each other too. So it had a different purpose than just.
Well, you had some team members MIA too. Where was Elsie? Didn't see her.
Yeah, well, she was there. There were actually quite a few team members that usually go to podcast
that didn't
go. Right, that did not go.
So I shipped prepped to have 500 come by the booth, or actually 400. We planned for 400. So I shipped half my stuff back, half my T-shirts, half my swag.
Same with us.
So the goal is never to ship anything home. So, but we're kind of bashing on this, and I'm not really bashing. I'm just.
Well, no, but it's just the realities of the uncertainty of the Delta virus situation, right? People are scared.
But why? You've had the vaccine. Why are you worried about coming to an event that's
because people are hearing that people got the vaccine or catching the virus.
Okay,
right?
Well, everyone that came, everyone that we saw in person, everyone that showed up. Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. We love seeing you in person.
Yeah, no, it was great.
It was great.
For what it was. It was just really a sign to me that we have a long way to go.
A long way to go. And I'm
get back to normal.
I'm just surprised people are so scared to travel. It's kind of beyond me to a certain extent.
Though I would say that the people that were there were not exactly given the impression that they were like, stay away, kind of thing. So I think the people that were there obviously are the ones that were not really all that worried about wearing masks all the time.
I said there was about, it was kind of funny because I saw a few people show up the first time they had a mask on. And then a little later in the day, they didn't have a mask no more. I'm like, is it peer pressure or what's happening? Because we had a member in our booth that had a red badge and a face mask, and she has good reason for for doing that, and we let each of our 10 members decide what level they wanted to be in the booth. And a couple of us were green, one was yellow, one was red, and and we respected boundaries. When people came up to the booth and they had a yellow badge, we did accidentally a couple of times I reached out to shake somebody's hand. They said, "Oh, I'm yellow." I said, "Oh, I'm sorry," and put the elbow out.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't see that many reds per se.
I didn't either. Well, and we should probably explain to the audience what we're talking about, because when you registered for Podcast Movement, you had the choice to select a color of a badge. It was like a button, actually.
Button, yeah.
And they had them color coded green, yellow, and red. Right. If you wore a red one of these things, you were kind of like
social
stay
distance.
away.
Yeah.
Right. If you're wearing yellow, kind of like,
get a little bit in the comfort zone, but let's not shake hands or touch. Let's elbow bump.
Right. If you're wearing this green badge, then it's like, all bets are off.
Right. and I had people come up hugging me, and even I'll be honest, I'm green, but I was like, I was not going to go hug anyone unless they so got a few people that kind of hugged me, and I thought
reasons to not do that too at times, right?
Right, so, of course, but there was some. Okay, let's just put that. I had some men come up and hug me, like, "How you doing, bro? Give me the bro tap,"
Right.
And so that's cool, but even then, I'm kind of like, okay, you're not in my personal space. I'm green. I'm good. I signed up for this.
Yeah.
So.
So I think it was good for who was there, and I think if we had over 1,000 people there, that was a good group. I just feel bad. I wanted to go to a bunch of the after hours stuff, but I got locked in at these dinners that went 4 hours long.
Well, let me talk about the after hours event.
Please do, Todd. Yeah.
The first night they had it was in one of the main. We can talk about the facility, but it was in one of only 2 bars in this facility that was open.
Mm-hmm.
There was 900 people from another conference, and they had 900, and then there was us, and we went into a bar that really, 200 people in there, and you are, you're spitting on each other. It's that close, and you can't get really, bunched up, and waitresses run ragged, and the facility. Let's just sit this way. They had over 500 job openings. Because I went on their website and looked.
I didn't know that.
They had over 500 job openings, starting at $23 an hour, and they can't get people. So the restaurant situation was tight, very, very tight. Matter of fact, I had them on blast from day one. Like, why didn't you tell the conference providers that you weren't going to be able to feed us all, so that we could make plans to go off site? And I think they did the best they can under the circumstances. They can't get help just like the rest of the service industry can't. So they're struggling, and you could see the frustration. Those poor employees were run ragged. So, it's just like, tip well to make, these people feel that they come to work tomorrow. But the first night event was good. But, not a lot of people, how we kind of swirl around.
Mm-hmm.
People grouped up. And basically, we had a table and bribed our waitress to make sure we went to the front of the line for liquor and, everything that we normally do. And people came and gone a little bit. And then the second night was the party that was actually hosted by the Podcast Academy.
Podcast Academy, yeah.
And I
didn't wind up going to that.
So there was probably, I want to say 250, 300 that went to that event.
Wow.
And
that's a pretty small number.
Yeah, there was maybe 150 inside, 150 outside. There was, people were telling tales, and it was good, it was good networking, good conversation. Mm-hmm. But still not a lot of cross mingling. I was kind of forcing it at times, barging into groups saying, "Hey, how you doing?" So little of that going on. And then, and you could get it. They had 6 bartenders. You could get a drink within about 2 minutes of walking up to the bar. There wasn't long queues, so getting a cocktail or buying some cocktails was not a problem. And then that, whatever time that fizzled out, the rest of the bars were closed in the hotel. You couldn't go, you couldn't move to another. Really, there was nothing to move to per se because all the bars were closing at 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night. So the big party, hosted by the #1 podcast company, iHeart. Oh, you got the train going by. So I said that for dramatic pause. Then, the iHeart party, we'd actually took an Uber downtown, and Uber was on surge. There's no taxis available, so Uber's running in surge in most cities. So it was like $50 to get to where we were going to go eat. And we came downtown and ate, had a great meal, then just walked over to the venue, saw a little bit of downtown Nashville. And that was a great party. It was great. They, for about an hour and a half, we were all mingling. They had a DJ that was not a DJ, playing on house music, plenty of bartenders, open bar, lots of discussions, people moving around. It was really, really good. And then they brought, I forget this guy's name, but they brought in this old school, famous TikTok, YouTube DJ who he rocked the house. He rocked the house. We were all, it was, the dance floor was full.
Wow.
Everyone was saying that was the iHeart Super Spreader event. That's what people were saying. But if anyone caught COVID, it was at that event because we were all jammed together. And they had plenty of room in the venue to spread out. But this DJ was so fantastic that everyone was dancing and had a great time. And so I looked at the watch. I knew the time the party was over. So I bounced 15 minutes before the masses headed to the bus. And I got one of the first buses back to the hotel, thinking when they get to the hotel, I'm going to be able to go to the bar. I can go to the bar. I can get things set up and wait for the crew to come back. Bar was closed. I was like, what the hell? What the hell? What are we going to do now? So I was there for last call. So I ordered like a dozen beers so that as people come back, we could all have a cocktail and still talk for another hour or so. Right. But there wasn't a single night that I wasn't in bed by 11:45, 11:30.
Yeah,
Rob, what time are we normally going to bed at podcasting room? 2 o'clock in the morning, 3.
2 or 3 in the morning. Yeah, it's not abnormal.
Yeah.
But I did have some trouble even in that bar that you're talking about, losing my voice. I think I lost my voice after just the first day or so.
Yeah, well, it's, you have to condition your voice. I am
you do.
I am such a vocal person. I usually don't have. I would start to lose mine too, but so the socializing was down,
right?
And I always call it holding court because we get everyone together. We're always telling stories, and
well, I did think that many of the sessions were quite a ways away from the exhibition area.
Walking distance, maybe. Yeah, not that far.
Well, they
had to pass the exhibitions area to get to the sessions.
Right, and there was some upstairs, and some you had to go downstairs, and then down a long hallway, and then you had to go down another hallway, and
so maybe people were just bopping and bopping between sessions and not. Yeah.
So the main stage, the keynote stage, was right off of the exhibition area. And then there was like 2 little sub-presentation areas that were off to the left and the right of the keynote room, which were going alternating. Those were going alternating at the same in between the keynote sessions or the live on stage sessions going on. So it'll be interesting to see the replays that are going to be available of all the sessions.
Yeah,
I thought it was a good selection of sessions and topics and things like that. A lot of stuff. I liked Tom Webster's presentation. I thought he did a interesting job of doing his presentation with a mask on.
Yeah.
and using the analogy of a cup of water to discuss his podcast consumption pattern.
By the way,
and he mentioned this show
well,
on stage.
He mentioned this show, and then I got to mention too, because
Yeah, you did.
And okay, so here we go.
Don't eat me, Tom Webster.
So Tom's giving his presentation, and he says he's talking about editing, right?
Yeah.
And how editing's so important, and that you tighten the show up and get rid of all this stuff. And he says, but yet, and he use my reference how I never edit. He says, but he's been podcasting 16 years. He's been podcasting 16. He made that point. So I thought that was kind of funny. So Tom, thank you for the first of all, for the personal shout out for me and the acknowledgement of no editing.
Right.
And number 2, thank you for the shout out on the new media show. If that didn't get us a few subscribers, nothing did. So thank you so much. We appreciate it. But Rob, I have to thank Mike, because in the chat room, he says, Questlove from the Tonight Show and Roots, that was the DJ.
Right.
And
that's what I heard.
I was amazed. Now, let's go back to when Todd was a young lad in ether years, living in Guam. Being in the Navy, I was DJing. And we'd have to carry in 100 boxes of albums, LPs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, how things have changed. Now, I knew they had changed quite a bit. I knew no one was carrying LPs in. And, I knew they had these fancy controllers and stuff like this. But Rob, I'm going to put it on the screen. You can't see it, but the audience will be able to see it. This is what I want for Christmas, is the Rane DJ1 professional motorized DJ controller. Now, if there is someone in this audience who wants to be a benefactor, boy, oh boy, that's on my Christmas wish list. It's only $1,599. Yes, $1,599.
Wow.
Or $67 a month on a 24-month payment plan with Guitar Center.
What are you going to do with that, Todd?
To be honest with you, probably use it for about 2 hours, and then it'll sit and collect dust for 6 months. No, I was just impressed. What
you can start a second career, Todd.
No,
get a costume.
No.
You can get up on
Don't
stage,
need a costume.
Do these live events. Well, I mean, more of these DJs are like wearing,
if I got my mix,
outfits.
if I got my mix down, the wheels of steel will speak for themselves. You don't know DJ. As long as you can get the audience hopping and the bar shaking, you have done your job.
Yes, you have. No question about that. Hey, Todd, did you get a chance to talk to Sharon Taylor, who's the CEO I just lost my...
Better Google her name quick.
No, Omni Studios out of Australia. So
I did not get a chance to talk to Sharon.
Well, because Sharon went to this podcast movement event as a robot.
Yeah, I saw her wandering around.
Did you get a chance to actually talk to her?
No.
I talked to her
I didn't know who it was. There was no sign on the robot. I didn't know. I thought it was some...
It says Robot Sharon on it.
Okay,
and it had her badge hanging around the video monitor, and it's this motorized kind of like screen that kind of comes up. Actually, it's on the front page of Pod News. If you saw it from
I did see it. Yeah.
So it was Robo Sharon. So Todd, that's always an option for you if you want.
You know how much it costs to rent.
You
know how much it costs to rent one of those things. I've seen those at CES. Matter of fact, that's a telemedicine device. Right. That's what it's primarily used for.
Yeah.
It was cool, and props to them for doing that. She couldn't get out of Australia because of Australians, authoritarian lockdown of their citizens, where you're told where you can and can't go. So you can't even leave the country in Australia. And if you do, you have to spend like 5,000 Aussie to get back in the country and quarantine. But I think you have to have a reason. You just can't get on an airplane and go somewhere.
Well, what's shocking about it, as far as I know, they've only had like one case.
That's not the case. No, it's not
the case.
No.
Oh,
no.
I thought.
No.
I thought that's what I read.
Yeah, I think that was. I think you read propaganda, but anyway,
Okay.
and if they have had one case, congratulations, but I don't think that's the situation. Um, so,
Anyway.
and I guess I think as long as the podcasters were there,
Mhm.
got to attend sessions and get educated and do a little hobnobbing and, a little networking and get some information that, they got their money's worth out of the event. And, thanks to Dan and Jared and the team for, really probably putting on an event that they were probably scared to death to pull the trigger on. So,
Mhm.
but it did set the tone because I'm on the airplane coming back and I'm thinking NAB, North Hall, where they've got us positioned. Just Libsyn and Blue Area are the only two podcaster companies that are now exhibiting.
Right.
There was one other that might be there, but they're not quite, they're partly podcasts. There might be one more. I'm going to have to spend a lot of money to do PR work to get people to the booth because we're going to have to do an email campaign and a whole bunch of other stuff to let people know, hey, we're here.
Mhm.
How many people are really going to Vegas for NAB? Considering it's only Central and North Hall. There's no South.
Well, I heard that a lot of it's going into the new hall.
You heard they're going to West. They're going to
West.
have West filled. Well, if that's the case, then the numbers might not be bad.
Yeah, because I guess that West Hall is huge.
It's huge, but I was under the understanding that only North we're going to have to go on the NAB website and look, but that's in October.
Mhm.
That and now I'm concerned we're going out to Salt Lake here in a couple of weeks for an event and then immediately following going to Dragon Con. So I'm just like, is that, I just can't imagine they'll cancel Dragon Con at this point. People have too much money wrapped up into
all these events.
Yeah.
So what's going on at Dragon Con? Are they another digital media track?
They are, and I was basically kind of surprised along with another attendee that, I basically signed up for one and end up on four. So I'm on four different speaking tracks, and we'll see. We'll see what happens at Dragon Con. So I'll be down there the whole week. I'm going to go find some.
What's the dates of that?
What's
the dates of that?
So it's the first, I believe, the 1st through the 7th. I arrive on September. Oh, it's
October,
September.
right.
No, September 2nd through the 6th. I might actually. I think it's or the 5th. I don't know. I have to look at my calendar at what day I leave. It doesn't go past the end of the weekend. So
okay, so it's at the end of this month then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's the beginning of September. But then,
at the end of this
month.
Right.
But then I'm going to be in Salt Lake starting on, I think, the 27th or something like that for a conference out there.
That's pretty tight between those two events.
Well, I leave. Matter of fact, I leave before the event's over and fly to Atlanta. In order to make my connections, I have to leave at like 3:00 on the 1st or something like that. And Dragon Con is it's a killer. That's
No, we've done that one together.
Yeah. So we'll see what the attendance of that event is, but that's really going to set the tone then. And then the next event is obviously NAB in October. Immediately following NAB is She Podcast.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So all everything and again, I don't watch the mainstream news, so I don't know what propaganda they're telling this week, but everyone says that this thing should be on the downslope.
I hope so as we move into fall.
Yeah.
I guess that's what's happened with the Delta in some of the European countries. We saw a peak and then it fell off.
Well, we'll see, but what's the next variant? Bravo Charlie Zulu, what's next?
Yeah, who knows, right?
So, but anyways.
Yes. So anything, I don't think there's been a lot of breaking news or anything like that that's happened here over the last few days.
Next week there will be.
There will be, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's happening
Can't
next
tell.
week, Todd?
Can't tell.
Oh, something with you guys, huh?
Yeah, well, we're just starting our rollout of our stuff. So
Some new stuff. Is that what you're talking about?
let's put it this way: we dynamited everything, and so we're going to start rolling out the new
You
stuff.
Wow. So you're doing some mining, huh?
We didn't do mining; we bulldozed it.
No, you blow it up and then
Oh yeah, we
dig it out, right?
we bulldozed it and buried it.
Wow. Okay. Wowie woo woo. Yes.
So
So I'm just trying to look at the news a little bit. I guess the Outlier Podcast Festival has been postponed.
yep.
They're going to push it off to, I think, next year, I think. So there is some folks that are getting a little cold feet about events going forward. So
That's too bad. You know, it really is. You know,
yeah.
If you have your enough is enough. You've had your vaccine. Let's go.
So I did hear that the VidCon conference is still on track to happening in LA, coming up here in October. And they expect about 50,000 people at that event.
So let me tell you about a phone call I had today.
Okay.
So my marketing team, my marketing director, my lead marketing guy is out on vacation. So his email, I've been CC'd on most of his email, and we have a catch-all email, and got an email from this sales guy from Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
So, shh, everybody, shh.
Don't tell anybody.
Yeah,
Don't tell anybody.
And if Spotify, if you're listening, don't shh. So I'm having a call with one of their salespeople next week to buy advertising around podcasts.
Which company was this?
Did I stutter? Spotify.
Oh, okay.
So I said to the guy, I said, do you allow companies to advertise on Spotify that are a competitor? And he says, well, you don't compete with Spotify. I said, no, but you guys own Anchor. Are you going to allow me, a podcast service provider, to advertise on your platform?
Well, Todd, didn't you know that Anchor really is no longer a podcast hosting platform?
Well, that's true. That's true. So I guess I'm
Right?
good to go. So anyway,
I mean, if you think about it,
so maybe I probably shouldn't be saying this on the show, because maybe the call will get canceled. But we'll find out if this advertising is for content around because I'm going to ask.
It's probably for Spotify.
It is for Spotify, and I'm going to ask.
Probably has nothing to do with Anchor.
It's just a Spotify ad sales rep that wants to sell me to buy advertising in Spotify. So I am going to ask to buy advertising around non-exclusive podcasts on Spotify.
So, okay, let me get this straight. So you're talking to them about running campaigns in podcasts for Spotify, not Spotify coming to you necessarily and wanting to buy Spotify campaigns on.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
They want me to buy spots on their platform to buy around podcast.
Oh, on their exclusive or originals.
We will find out, because I'm going to say I want to buy advertising around non-exclusive podcast content.
Well, of course you are. Yeah.
So we'll see how that call goes.
Yes.
But
I think it's an interesting point about Anchor, Todd. Are they now a podcast hosting platform?
No, they're not, because they don't give RSS feeds out no more. You're just a show.
Interesting change, isn't it?
Yes,
the more you think about it.
It is. It absolutely is.
So I'm not sure. I'm not sure why they chose to do that, but I guess I guess maybe it makes sense if given what's been going on.
But I did have one instance of a show that called us that wants to migrate to us, and they don't have an RSS feed.
Where are they coming from?
Anchor.
Oh, from Anchor.
And they were quite confused. What do you mean I can't migrate automatically?
They didn't think for a minute that maybe there wasn't a way to do that.
They didn't know. They didn't know that
they needed to have an RSS feed.
That's right.
That creates an interesting dynamic, doesn't it, Todd? That has me thinking a little bit.
Shh.
Maybe there should be a few others that get that idea too.
I'd love it. I'd love it. I think it's a great idea. But on the other hand, it could be a form of block-in.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yes.
I guess you have to put that in the box of thinking outside of the box, Todd, because it's certainly not conventional thinking.
So we do have to ask a question, though, and this is changing topics. Hey, Apple, you guys still got a problem? Because some people think there is a problem. And here's the thing that I laugh about this, because I already know it's a problem. And I don't even need Apple to respond to this. Here's the post in Pod News. Hey, come on, James. You know the answer to this already. Why are you...
Well, James is no longer there, Todd.
No, we're talking about James. Okay, excuse me. Hang on.
Don't eat me, James Cridland.
Oh, James Cridland.
Okay, so here's the post in Pod News. Are there still problems at Apple Podcasts? Well, nobody wants to put the name to it. Pod News is a number of large publishers saying that Apple Podcasts occasionally doesn't notice new episodes appearing in podcast feeds, and they sometimes think caked up the 72 hours to appear by iOS 14.7 fixed an auto download bug. This bug is different. What do you know? Hit reply and let us know. Okay, I'm hitting reply. Forever and a millennium.
They've always had this trouble. Yeah, there's nothing new about that.
Nothing new. Nothing new. What's changed is that no longer does the Apple Podcast app actually subscribe to the feed. It is now pulling from the directory. So, whereas before a podcast listener would open their app, they'd come to the new media show and they say, oh,
there's a new
episode. Because guess where they got the feed? From me, from us.
Directly from the RSS
Directly from our feed, and they would download the show or listen to it immediately. Now
it has to be cached first.
Now it has to be cached.
Yep.
And if your feed is a little big, let's say you expand out to 500 episodes, or
if you publish on a unusual cadence, right?
Or your server's not so fast,
right?
Apple times out when they hit your feed, and then you get put in something. I almost bet you get put in the penalty box. And they say, "Oh, we couldn't load that. There must have been a problem with the website. We'll kick a flag and we'll check it in 24 hours."
Plus, Todd, I've also heard that that if you have 3 iTunes categories selected in your RSS feed, that can cause a problem too.
I haven't seen that. I've got 3 on this show, and
a bug in there that we're actually starting to recommend that people only select 2 categories of the 3, and it will avoid a delay in the ingestion process.
So, do you know how hard it is? Do you know how hard it is to pull 3 million feeds every hour, half hour, 15 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, and you have to do it very carefully too, else you'll trigger DOS attacks.
Or your provider will say, hey,
you're pulling too much.
You're pulling too
fast.
much. Who's this bad character? And they flag them and they put them in the penalty box for 24 hours.
Right.
So it may not even be Apple. It might be, dun, 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 your hosting provider. Because, I'm going to piss a bunch of people off here now. Okay, let's say your domain name is myhostingprovider.com. And there are, let's just say 20,000 feet at myhostingprovider.com. Well, there's lots of things that can happen and where maybe myhostingprovider.com is put in the penalty box.
Yeah, or if it's a new platform, maybe there are times when it gets saturated.
Dun, dun, dun. Dun,
because
dun, dun.
That hosting platform hasn't built the infrastructure.
They
to
don't know
support
how to serve. Yes.
spikes in demand.
Yes.
Right?
Don't know how to scale up. And the server goes, hey, I don't have enough open connections. Not telling you companies that know what you're doing, what to do.
Right.
And you know what? Unless you have an observant IT guy or gal, you're not even going to know.
So what we're really saying is that some of these things, it's easy to blame Apple, but it may not really always be Apple that's causing it.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
It just may look like it. But it could also be happening across other listening platforms, but you just may not be paying attention to them as much.
And maybe, I know where the dead bodies are.
That's your job, Todd. You're a podcast host.
I know where the dead bodies are. So
right.
It's because guess who they blame?
Yeah, they always blame the host.
They blame the host, always.
Usually.
Yeah. And the host says, it's not our problem. Everything's fine when they look at that moment.
But in this particular situation, Apple looks like the culprit. But Apple changed their infrastructure and how they look at RSS feeds as opposed to many others in the industry.
And also the way, you got to remember, okay, Mike's in the chat. Mike is the lead. Maybe he's working. Mike, how many support tickets do you get a week from podcasters saying, I published my podcast and it hasn't up? This is before the change. This is before Apple Podcast would, when you had the Apple Podcast app and you were, as a listener, subscribed directly to the feed. When that was the case, how many times, Mike, a week would you tell podcasters, subscribe to your own show and see if it's updated? And that solved the problem. A week. I bet he's going to come back and say 10 times a week. We'd have people that reach out to us and say, they would go to Apple Podcasts and look for their show. It's not updated. Not even having followed or subscribed to their own show. So they didn't go to the app first. They went to the store first. And, of course, the store was 24 hours behind at times. And the app would be up to date. And I'm good. I don't have to worry. Then once they figured that out, now the cards have switched. We can't tell. We can't tell them. We have to say, contact Apple. Because it is Apple. Or we have a problem. Or we always check to make sure we don't have a problem. We do a cursory look at the feed to make sure it's good, make sure it's not airing out, make sure there's not a validation issue. We do our due diligence on a feed that we run. So this is, it's not. So, James, this has been a problem forever. This is nothing new.
Right.
And it's surprising these companies are figuring out that, They didn't pay attention to the store. They paid attention to their apps. But because this is the kick in the butt, because most of the apps out there feed from Apple, you're going to be delayed everywhere.
Right. That's right. That's true.
So some app providers I'm hearing are starting to build their own caching system. Imagine that.
Yeah, more and more of them are wanting direct submission from podcasters too. Having those types of conversations with a few of the platforms that have been only getting shows via their own login process.
Blueberry has an API if you want to update your app, by the way.
Right. So I think there's progress. And then, like we mentioned up on stage during our live session, that we are reaching a point, I think we're getting there, where most of the major music streaming platforms around the world have or will be embracing podcasts at some point. I think we're kind of reaching that saturation point. And then we're going to see genre-based topic apps start to incorporate podcasts, which I think is the next tier of listening apps that we're going to start seeing.
We're already seeing it. It's starting to trickle out.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm already working with a couple of them already.
Yep.
And then there's this other type of listening app, which is considered the social networking podcast listening apps, which a big emphasis, I think, coming out of Podcast Movement is around the interactivity level of podcasting, which I think you heard a little bit of that from the Fireside folks, of trying to get that deeper interactive engagement layer with your audience, right? And that's the common theme, I think, and Danny talked about that during our session as well, about the power of audience activation and involvement in your show and what you do even outside of your show, or that promotes your show and your supporters. And if you want to hear more about that directly from Danny, go listen to the live show from Podcast Movement. But I did see an article that came out of one of the attendees from Podcast Movement, Jenna Spinelli, who wrote an article on Medium talking about her 3 takeaways for independent podcasters. It's an article that just kind of summarized a little bit of the big topics I think that were kind of overriding the theme from Podcast Movement. And I think one of them falls out of Mr. Tom Webster, is, you can't really succeed in podcasting unless you have some idea of who your audience is. And I think that was a big theme that came out of Tom's presentation as well, doing a survey of your audience, getting an idea of who they are, what they're looking for. And then also he's been a big fan of this concept of making your show unique. Don't do a show like anybody else is doing, if at all possible. And, do surveys of your audience to learn who those people are. And that question came up during our session too, Todd, and we talked about that a little bit as well. And then the other big theme that came out of is, and it says here, the independent podcasters can find strength in numbers. And I think that concept is really, I was just reading what that, it says, session, the power of promotional swaps, and the use of kind of marketing and PR to grow your numbers, right? And that was kind of like the overriding theme, right? Is how do we grow audience? And I know, Todd, we've been hearing that a lot over the last year, is that as we grow this medium, the show marketing part of this is so important. And then the third piece that she highlights here is content is king now more than ever, which is a very subjective scenario, but quality of content, value of content, I think more and more duration of content, taking the content and pulling out what's in the content and exposing it to drive attention and awareness. And I heard many companies talking about excerpts and pulling out segments of content and using those as promotional materials for getting people to pay attention to your content. I don't know, Todd, what's your thought on those three?
I think we should rename this show New Media Show on Fire.
Right.
No, unique content has always been.
Right.
Content. I think, it's about the content. The good content rises to the top, and
yeah,
so,
I know, Todd, we talked about this topic probably a year ago, but it was around the power of networks, right? Podcast networks, more specifically. I think at the time we felt that podcast networks were going to become just a huge thing in the podcasting space. And then at some point, all those networks were going to get swallowed up by bigger networks, right? So we see this clustering of podcasts. I don't know that we've seen, well, maybe to some degree we've seen the proliferation of networks, but I do think that we've seen a lot of independent shows just and feel a little queasy about maybe getting into partnerships with networks. And what are you seeing out there, Todd, on that?
Well, I've always said that, being part of a network has tremendous value.
It can if the
can.
network provides value, right? And I think that's always the question.
And it's all about, what are you going to do for me and what am I going to do for you? It's got to be quid pro quo. You got to have, you get something, give something. Rob, you just, I haven't been part of I'm still part of a network, but,
Right.
we kind of run on autopilot. But in the early days, we saw huge success by really cross promoting and talking about each other, and we weren't running bumpers. We were running, sometimes we ran bumpers from other shows.
Yeah, we did.
And we talked about other shows, and we recommended them and cross-linked to them, and brought advertising to those shows. There was, advertising that was going on. So, we proved early on that model works really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was talking to, I think you were standing there. I was talking to a young man about building a network. He was at our session at the, our live session, and he asked some very good questions, and he came up later and we talked to him for probably 45 minutes. And I just made one point. I said, if you're going to run a network, there has to be, networks can't be run by committee. There has to be someone that's the lead, that sets the pace, that, sets the rules, and, doesn't work by committee. So, gave him some tips there because he was thinking about starting a network, and I think he'll be very successful in doing so. But, for the majority of you listening today, a network doesn't have to be 20 shows. It could be 2. It could be 3. And it's shows that you love and trust.
Mm-hmm.
And if you love a show and they're maybe even in your own genre, approach that other podcaster and say, let's promote each other. And if they're smart, they will. Now, if the show's much, much bigger than you, then you may have to give more than you get in return, but it's a start. If you mention them 5 times, they mention you once, and they're 5 times as big as you, winner, chicken dinner, you've still won. So I think there's huge value in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it gets back to matching up, right? What show goes with what network, and how that show matches up against the other shows in the network. Is it competitive? Is it compatible? I think there's just a lot of questions, and there's also trust issues that happen too when you turn over your brand to someone else to represent it somehow in some capacity. I think a lot of people hesitate on that.
Well, there's not necessarily have to be turnover. There can be cooperation with ground rules. Matter of fact, who wants to be part of the New Media Show network? You want to be? You listen to this? You want to be part of the network? Give us a shout out. Executive position there, Rob. That we're going to be a network now. I'm just kidding.
Go Go for it. I think we had Veritone 1 up on stage talking about advertising.
Yeah.
I think it's a great conversation for this show.
Yeah. So I think that, there is potential out there for shows to see growth. That
Right.
again, it's one of many things we talk about all this on this show. So
Yeah.
it's just one quiver in your, in your bow holder, whatever it's called. What do they call those things where you put your arrows, your arrow quiver? Is that what they call it? Or
Yes.
it's just
I
another
believe
arrow in
so.
your quiver. So see, I can't even talk straight today, but
Yeah.
I think there's huge opportunity. Going back to her article, though, there was a couple of things there that, I resonate all the way back to the beginning. And I'm like, some of these reoccurring themes that you and I natively know because we've just been in this space so long. It's a very good article. I didn't read it, but she sounds like she was on point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, Tom's point that she quotes in here is that, rather than asking how you can grow your audience, you should ask why your numbers have hit a plateau.
Right.
Why have you stopped growing? And Tom said, downloads stop growing because people stop recommending your show
Mm-hmm.
to others. Everyone who listens needs to tell 2 friends. So, and then those 2 friends tell 2 friends, and then those 2 friends tell 2 friends. And you can see how that turns into 1 million listeners.
I use that in my sponsorship pitch on Geek News Central.
Right.
I tell them, I know you probably already picked up a product from the sponsor, but you've got friends. I don't tell them to write the promo code on the bathroom wall, but I almost do.
Right.
Share this with your friends, family members, people that you know that's getting ready to start a web. That's what I do. That's how and again, it's same thing applies when if someone's a fan of the show, they're going to spread your show without you asking them.
Right.
Because people say, what do you listen to? I listen to this and this and this.
Right.
Matter of fact, give me your phone. I'll subscribe you to them or follow them so you can have it and check it out.
Mm-hmm.
I do that all the time. What do you recommend? Boom, boom, boom. Here's 3.
There's some resources that you can tap into too to get access to, survey technology. There's one that's recommended through an article that's part of the bellowcollective.com website. But this is a survey tool that they recommend here. Is called the Iterate tool, I think is what it's called. It's ITERATE HQ.com. And it's basically a feedback tool. And they do have a free trial that you can go in here and create a survey of your audience.
So
that can be embedded in your website. It can be can be shared via mobile, email, all that kind of stuff.
Anybody that's a podcaster that has claimed a podcast on Blueberry, if you've claimed your show, we have a free survey that you can put on your website. Drop the embed on your website. It's a fast, matter of fact, we're getting ready to revise it. It's a fast 10 or 11 questions. We get the basic demographic data information. It's just very basic, very fast. People can complete it in 30 seconds. We've had that survey available for more than 10 years. And it's free. And we, it's a little, but you don't have to use ours. But I contend, though, Tom had given this, 300 questions or whatever it was that I don't know if it was that many. It seemed like it was a lot. The problem with the big survey is big.
Well, you want to keep it short. I agree with you.
Yeah, you want to keep it, quick and dirty. You want to be fast in and out, but you want to collect the information that you need without missing stuff. So, the one we provide, and we're going to, like I said, we're going to revise it because there's some questions in there that, are, more people now spend more than $1,000 online every year. That's pretty given, with Amazon and everything else. So, because trends have changed, but most of the other questions are pretty much nailed on.
Yeah, the feedback that this article gives is that the topics and the questions that you might want to consider in this is like age, location, content feedback, what's your listening habits, What's your opinion of the sponsors? What's your opinion on financial support, whether it's donation, Patreon, whatever those things, and then future show planning type questions, like what kind of merch would you like, or what kind of, do you like live shows? Do you, these type of questions can kind of get to the heart of maybe what your audience would like to see in your show. So,
but there's basics that you're going to need to know for an ad campaign. You're going to need
right.
you're going to need age, male, female, how much they make, they have kids. There's just a certain minimum.
Right.
And then
they didn't cover that here totally. But I agree with you. I think that age
is critical.
Gender, income, probably maybe even a little bit of a profession.
So if you think your audience is 18 to 35, if you think, and then you get the survey results and it's 25 to 45 or 35 to 45, wouldn't that, most of you have a tendency to maybe make your content a little different, change to maybe, I'm not saying if you're attracting that age group and you don't know it, maybe
there's something that you're doing that's attracting that age group already.
Right. So you either do something in addition to attract younger people, or you enhance the content to keep those people coming back.
Right.
So there's lots of decisions. And if you find all of a sudden that 70% of your audiences are women and you didn't know that, then there's all kinds of content decisions you can make based upon demo data that you get.
Yeah, the direction you want to take your show too, because sometimes this can be confirmational data too. This can be data that tells you what you're currently doing right now is catering to this type of an audience. How you shape that going forward would need you would kind of necessitate you experimenting around a little bit with trying to expand into like maybe a slightly different demographic that's maybe a little broader that will reach a larger audience, and then you survey it again and see how that matches up with the changes that you made.
And,
did you lose certain audience or did you gain certain audience?
And maybe Tom can weigh in for us here at some point, or someone else.
Tom on the show at some point maybe to talk about it.
I feel personally that the first 10 questions are going to be the critical stuff I really want to get.
Right.
And then if I have 30 more questions, those are the good to haves, because the people that are going to get all the way to 40 are your top fans. The people that so it depends on how far they get into the survey, and hopefully your software captures every answer and doesn't have to wait till they hit submit. Because we see
it also depends on your goals of what information you need for what you're doing, because some shows don't have monetization goals. So there are going to be questions that are just more about content.
And people abandon surveys all the time. How many of you have gotten a survey? I've answered lots of surveys because I like seeing the questions. So getting from the airlines. So I answer surveys all the time. And some of them go on and go on and go. And at about 3 minutes, I'm like, I got other work to do. And I bail. So I just don't have time to finish it. So you have to be, you got to have that time constraint. Now, if I was a super fan of a show, I'm going to go all the way through 50 questions, because I'm really like, yes, no, yes, this sucks, it's good, it's great, it's good. I'm going to give my opinion.
Right.
But that's not necessarily, that bends the curve a little bit when it comes to, if all the people answered all the way to the end, you get a good sampling. If only 2 people get all the way to the end, well, those 2 folks are the ones that are emailing you already on your show and giving you feedback.
Yeah, and you may need to get creative with incentives for people to fill out the survey too, especially if they are a little longer. I don't know that I have much of suggestions for how you might do that, but I think just use your creativity might be the answer, and depending on what your resources are, and depending on what
the people that are running for a gift card. make it substantial. One person will get, let's say you're in the running for a $200 Amazon gift card.
Right.
And one person of how many ever, but if only 2 people fill the survey out, well, you're going to have to write that $200 check. So you're going to want to run that survey long enough to get enough respondents. But you don't want to run it too long either. There's 2 tokens to that.
Right. So, Todd, I noticed that the Edison Research Top 50 Most Listened to Podcasts came out during the podcast movement timeframe.
Yes.
And Q3 2020 to Q2 2021 weekly podcast listens. Joe Rogan came up number 1.
He's a podcast?
That was my whole point, was that is a sign of a change in the industry
as Tom made it pretty clear during his keynote.
Yep. Does it matter if a show has an RSS feed?
It does if they want to be involved in the podcast awards.
I know. That's true. That's true.
But I'm hardcore.
But it is a confirmation that supposition that you've had for many years, that I don't care where they listen as long as they listen, that does apply to this question, right?
But some of those,
right?
But they can only listen to Joe Rogan on Spotify. They can only listen. That rule doesn't apply to Joe. He doesn't care. He can't say that no more. They have to listen on Spotify. So again, I contend very few successful radio programs. Let's look at the late Rush Limbaugh show. 700 or 800 stations, something ridiculous. Syndicated. Right. He wouldn't have made the money he made if he'd have been on one station in Tampa, Florida.
Well, another example of that is Howard Stern, right? So,
but he's on that's a little different. That's a little different scale, But for the average Joe or Jane, then you don't have much choice but to be syndicated everywhere. So I guess probably again 99.9% of shows have a feed now. It's that.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you look at even this top 50 list, I think all the other shows on that list all are RSS based. Joe's is the only one that isn't, I think.
Well, you got to see if there's any Amazon shows in there. Got to see if there's any more exclusive Spotify's. You got to look and see if there's any. There's a number of other platforms that don't have feeds. And technically, you can have a premium podcast on Apple and not have a feed. So.
I don't think any of those are showing up, though, because they're probably not going to build that big of an audience.
Right.
See, I think Joe is the outlier here.
Well, Joe's always the outlier. You remove him from the equation, and still, you look at that list, it's a pretty impressive list.
Yeah. I'm looking at each of these shows, and I'm wondering if there are any of them that are also exclusive on Spotify.
Well, I'll be honest with you. Going through the nominees for the podcast awards this year, I was pretty impressed. There's a pretty diverse group across a bunch of diverse platforms that made the slate. And you can see where the power of the network comes in a couple of the categories as well, because you see 1, 2, 3 shows from the same network, and that they marshaled the forces within the network to have everyone vote.
Right. Yeah, I do see that the Michelle Obama podcast.
Really? Is it on a top list?
It's it's top 25, and it's a Spotify podcast.
Okay.
But I'm assuming that is a public RSS feed because they're using the word podcast in the title.
No, probably
but
not.
You can't assume that, can you?
No. There might be a bootleg feed out there somewhere. I don't think those exclusive shows on Spotify, I don't think they have RSS feeds. But I did find some RSS feeds that came from a unique address on Spotify I've never seen before. Starts with open.spotify. That's the first sequence of the URL that are actually public feeds that come out of Spotify. I was kind of shocked on that one.
That is interesting.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I don't know if those are supposed to have been distributed or not, but that's the first time I've seen that. I've never went looking for them.
And then Call Her Daddy is number 11 on the list, and it says Spotify, formerly Barstool Sports. So that one could be an exclusive to Spotify and only available on Spotify as well. So maybe there's 3 podcasts that are in here that don't have RSS feeds. Yeah. So,
well, do you want me to read through the top 10 shows that are listed for the People's Choice Podcast Awards?
sure.
So here's the top 10. And That's Why We Drink, Chatty Broads, Derek and Romaine, Game of Roses, Morning Combat with Luke Thomas and Brian Campbell, Real Life, Real Crime, Sip, Suds, and Smokes, Tell 'em Steve Dave, The Bible in a Year with, I think it's from, I don't know how to pronounce I think he's a Catholic priest, Mike Schmitz featuring Jim Cavins, and The Fantasy Footballer. So we end up with a very interesting final list. There's several ladies. There is some diversity. There's LGBTQ. There's, I'm very happy with this, but it looks to me like the drinking shows are very popular, maybe because of COVID. Crime. We don't try to make this stuff up. We just go down the list and it was awesome.
Yeah.
So, and then we have, it's interesting too, because I saw the preliminary votes on the best podcast listening platform. And here's who made the list. It's almost all of them. Amazon Podcast, Apple Podcast, Blueberry Podcast Directory, DNR Studios, Google Podcast, Overcast, Podcast App, Pandora, Podcast Addict, Spotify, and Stitcher. That's who made the top 10. So,
Yeah.
who do you think's going to win? I can't sway it, but I almost know who's going to win. Yeah, we'll see.
I'm not sure.
We'll see if the stats. Now, of course, we got a 10,500 voting pool, so it all depends on how those people listen to podcasts. So it's going to be very interesting to see.
It'll be interesting to also know what the age demo of that group is too.
Well, we don't collect age demo on our voters.
Age and gender demo on that would be interesting, because that would tell you a little bit right there.
We take the whole stack, weight it based upon total number of votes each show got, so that we don't end up with, show ABC that had 80,000 nominations. We don't get that, 800 of their users aren't in the voting pool. We weight it so it's pretty even weighting, and then we basically randomize that and do the weighting, and 10,500 gets 10,000 listeners, 500 podcasters.
Yeah. Awesome. So anything else you can think of, Todd? I think we're getting towards the end of the show here. Any other takeaways from Podcast Movement that you can think of, or from our live session? I definitely want to encourage everybody to go check that out. I think that there was a robust discussion about all sorts of topics around advertising and how to engage audiences. So definitely check it out if you haven't seen it yet.
I can't say that I would recommend Gaylord Resort for a place to go stay anytime soon.
Oh, well, yeah, I get it. I get your point on that.
I think there are much better options in the Nashville area at this time, potentially. Beautiful resort. If we could have just ate on time and not waited 3 hours and that kind of stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Or called Uber Eats for delivery to a resort that has 8 restaurants. So,
did you ever make it over to the Fuse restaurant, Todd? At the other end of the hotel?
Which one is that? The sports bar?
It's like a big sports bar. It's
yeah,
really big.
Yeah, I did.
You did? Okay.
I did.
It had a very limited menu.
And it okay, 1 to 5 stars. What did you give them on the star rating for the food, Rob?
Probably maybe a 3.5.
I
Maybe.
give them 2.
Wow. So what did you order, Todd?
I ate there twice and was highly disappointed each time.
Yeah.
But I took to dinner at the steak place. I'll give that 5 stars plus. That was fantastic. At the Hickory steak place. That was a 5. No, that was a 10. The Italian restaurant, when you could get in, I'll give that one a 5 as well. Give the Italian restaurant a 5. Calamari off the charts. The rest of the places I couldn't get in. So,
Right. Yeah. I guess it would have been worse if the event had been fully packed with people.
They would have need to have hired buses to take us to the mall or something. There was definitely, or Uber Eats. There'd have been a line of Uber Eats car outside because they couldn't get the people. I feel bad for them. I'm dogging them here, but they can't hire people. They have employees get a $5,000 signing bonus to bring someone in to sign to work. As an employee, you recommend someone, you get a $5,000 signing bonus.
Wow.
That's what I think. They have to work some amount of time before you get it. But wow.
That actually might pay better to be a recruiter.
I think so too. Go there and have some job that's running a buffer or something, whatever, and then be a recruiter in disguise. I think you could, you could clean up well.
Todd, I'm trying to get some speaking opportunities going for all of us at NAB coming up. They usually have opportunities for us there, and I know that Dan Franks is the one that's kind of running that. Just to let you know if you didn't know that. So he might be a good resource. So if you're wanting to go to NAB, they are going to have a radio track there, but they're also going to have a podcasting element to it that's going to be run by the same folks from Podcast Movement. So it should be interesting to see what they come up with on that. I know that there's some potential sessions that we might be able to get involved in, Todd.
All right, that's awesome. By the way, if you are watching live today, make sure you say hello. And a few of you have already. I want to thank those that have. Robert and Gail and Mike and whoever else made comments are. We appreciate if you're watching us on YouTube. Make sure you say hello too. If you're on YouTube, definitely subscribe. Yes, we are on YouTube. We're on Twitter. We're on Twitch. I don't think anybody watches on Twitch. I got a report of one person watches on Twitch the other day. So, woohoo!
Yeah, I wonder when we're going to be able to get this show live on LinkedIn.
I requested. I just don't participate enough in LinkedIn, so I'm sure that's why I haven't been approved. I requested.
I think it would be a great place for this show.
Well, Rob, why didn't you request to have a streaming account, and between the two of us, we can figure out how to get on there. They have not approved me. So, does anybody have an in? You have a connection at LinkedIn that can hook us up?
Well, that's a Microsoft thing.
Well, someone listening to the show knows someone at LinkedIn. There's someone's got a friend of a friend. Then get us the switch turned on.
Or currently they're streaming live on LinkedIn. The other live platform that we're not on right now is the Amazon live streaming platform.
I need to look into that. We have friends at Amazon. Maybe we can figure that out.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. They have a live. Well, I mean, they own Twitch, so
yeah.
I think it's
on
a
Twitch.
derivative of that. But it's not that. It's something separate.
It all costs the same. I can multicast to as many people as I want. It's the same bill.
Oh, you
so
can?
I'm not limited in the outbound streams. I'm just how many of our hours we're on is what it costs.
Okay.
So
awesome. All right.
Well, as
should wrap it up.
Yes, we are. Rob? where they can reach you.
I'm on Twitter at Rob Greenlee, and you can send me an email, robg@lipson.com. Is a great way to reach out to me as well. And, we're going to be at as many podcasting conferences as we can. There's still a fairly limited pool of those, but we will keep you informed on ones that we are going to and ones that are coming up.
For those of you that are watching, make sure you get over to newmediashow.com, and right there on the right-hand column of the website, there's a couple of subscribe options for you. We want you to subscribe or follow to the show. Of course, as Rob said, our replay of the Podcast Movement event, show number 466, is up. I do want to thank the Podcast Movement team for getting us the massive file that we needed to do the edit on this. And so they did a good job of switching to, so you don't see that wide shot that's shown on the screen all the time. So you probably have listened to this episode. Well, I put it up on Monday, so it wasn't published on Monday, so there'll be 2 shows back to back. But definitely, I think you'll get something out of the live event. There's some really good insights there from Bart and from Danny. That especially if you're considering doing any type of advertising or building your community, these 2 gentlemen have got the cog on doing that. So there was some big takeaways out of that for me. Even you can teach old dogs new tricks and
right.
A lot of things to consider. Bart really laid it down in a big way. So you don't want to miss that episode even if you don't listen to this one, but you've already listened to this one if you're subscribed to it. So thanks for listening to this one.
Yeah. Well, Bart is the senior VP of growth at Veritone One, which is, I believe, Todd, maybe am I correct about this? They are the largest ad buying company in the podcasting space.
You get in favor of Veritone One and you're going to do well. But
yeah.
He tells you some do's and don'ts there on some things that can get you axed. I guess that's the better word. But growth. And anyway, I'm Todd at blueberry.com, Twitter at Geek News. Again, go over to newmediashow.com, follow or subscribe to the show. I need to change that language on the website because we're not supposed to use subscribe anymore. So follow the podcast. And we appreciate all of you to do. And those of you who hang out live with us, thanks.
Smash that like button.
Yes, indeed. Smash it. And recommend the show to your fellow podcasters. I know we picked up a number of people from Podcast Movement, but if you're a podcaster and you want to help your fellow podcaster, you guys help us build the show. Word of mouth. Tell 2 of your fellow podcasters to listen to the show. Tell them they get a PhD in podcasting. Rob, I'll leave that up to you to get some certificates designed.
Oh, okay.
That's right.
Yeah, leave that up to me.
Yeah, absolutely. You're the creative guy, so we'll leave that up to. Or if someone that's a fan of the show wants to make PhD certificates for us,
right?
And we are the School of New Media Show.
Wow. Okay. Now we're in direct competition with Dave Jackson.
No,
now.
he is the School of Podcasting. We're the School of New Media Show, which is different. So
the School of New Media.
That's School of New Media. There you go. So because we school you. All right, everyone. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next Wednesday, everyone. Take care. And if those of you listen to the podcast, well, we'll see you whenever you hit the play button.
Right.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.